Hey guys, I just popped on here. I just had some things that I felt like some insight that I felt like people are missing. I think we have people screaming Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. What about Palestine? What about this? What about that? And I think people are missing the root of the entire movement, which is, if you look at Me Too, if you look at Pride, if you look at recent events in the States beyond Black Lives, if you look at Trump's, I can't even say his name without laughing, if you look at Trump's wording for Mexican people, if you look at his wording for Muslims, if you look at his wording for Black people, if you look at his wording for poor people, he's dividing and conquering, right? Down there, and we can say all we want, we're in Canada, it doesn't matter. But you have to remember when the Holocaust was happening, there were people in Canada and other countries that were saying, oh, that's over there, so like that's not our problem. And that's what I think is so scary. Hey Olivia, I just think it's scary to look back in history. Like, most of the people, I know there's only a few people in my life, I just started it, we're old enough to remember reading about the Holocaust. We're old enough to remember thinking, if I was back then, I can't believe everyone just sat around and did nothing. And that's what I think is scary. Like, we're at a point where some people would rather argue, hey Alex, would rather argue about a hashtag than think about the actual bigger picture here. Like, I don't want to look back in history and have my kids be like, well, what were you doing? It's like, oh, well, I kind of thought there was some looting going on. I just thought it was a bit extreme, so I didn't get involved. Like, the whole point of us learning about the Holocaust, the whole point of us learning about these things in history was to say, hey, look what happens, look what can happen. And we are distracted as a society and as our generation, for sure, with the internet and social media. We've now turned that on its head and used it as a tool. Yes, sometimes the news is fake, and it takes us a minute to go, oh, wait, never mind, that wasn't real. But the point is, we learned about the genocides in Rwanda, the genocides in other places in the world, so that we could recognize if that was going to happen in our country. Yes, we can say Canada is so much better than the States. If we want to say Canada has no issues, well, that's a lie. We have our own issues. But the main point that I think people need to remember is, if no one intervened when they did, the Holocaust would have been acceptable, because nobody cared until it got too far. And thank God back then for people taking pictures and people talking to each other and people being able to see what was happening in these concentration camps, which I have to add, were not just Jewish people. There were people of German descent. There were people of, for sure, Black descent, because you ain't hiding that you're not white with blue eyes, all over getting killed. And we have to remember when we read those stories as kids and how we thought, oh my God, I would never just sit around and let that happen. And that's what I think people are missing when they're arguing over hashtags, because you're missing the part about, let's not let that happen to our neighbors, to our brothers, to our sisters. Don't care if you're white, I don't care if you're Muslim, I don't care if you're Black, I don't care if you're white. Sorry, I said white. I don't care if you're Jewish. Of course I said white twice, but I just feel like we have to look at history and remember what side we wanted to be on, and be very careful not to just sit back and do nothing because it's the United States and not Canada. Because we have our issues in Canada. I will say that their prison system was built to incarcerate Black people. And that is in history books, okay? So you can look that up if you don't believe me, or you're not sure. And that's one thing I really wish I was trying to get across to some people is, look at the way we treat First Nations, missing women. We all know there's tons of missing women. They don't have access to clean water. They don't have access to proper education. And yes, we don't go in there in droves. Hey, Kayla and Eric and Andre. We don't go in there to droves to help them. And yes, we can say, oh, well, the reserve is far and they have all their own rules and all that. But my point is, we're not perfect. The United States has been around a lot longer than us. Their whole country was built on slavery. Then they abolished slavery, the emancipation of slavery. What came after that was a bunch of free slaves with no money, no jobs, nowhere to go. So in that emancipation, they actually wrote, if you read it, you can be free as long as you're not a criminal, and you cannot make someone do labor as long as you're not a criminal. So if you want free labor from people of any color, because don't forget, Spanish people are also treated like second-class citizens in many places in the United States. And they have them at war with each other for a reason, right? So basically, no free labor from anyone unless you're a criminal. Okay, so you look at Victoria's Secret and JCPenney and all these places, and a lot of their things are made by inmates. And we can say, yeah, you need inmates to have jobs so they don't go crazy. But in some states, an hour of work gives you a 10-minute phone call. Now, if that ain't some sort of backward slavery, then I don't know what is, because you're getting free labor from people who are in there to serve their time. They're in there to say, yep, what I did was wrong. Now, we know for a fact that there's people in prison that do not deserve to be there and have done nothing. This is 2020. So now let's go back and think, okay, so a lot of people that were locked up right after emancipation, right after the freedom of slaves, were not supposed to be there. But they needed the free labor to keep their economy. So the best way to do that, the best way to get free labor, is to just lock a bunch of people up and tell them, okay, you're going to build this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. And the thing is, much like the missing Indigenous people at the time, people didn't look for missing Black men. People didn't go, my brother Jamal is missing. People didn't care. They didn't give a shit, because there was so much racism from the slavery days, and a lot of people were mad, first of all, that they had to free the slaves, and their economy wasn't in a good spot. We know what happens when the economy's not in a good place. People like to blame everything, including even nowadays immigrants. Immigrants are taking our jobs. Immigrants are, people look for someone to blame instead of working together. And that's one of the things I think is very concerning, is we have to look at history, not just, there was slavery and Black people had slavery and that's it. No, the actual law that abolished slaves told them they were free unless they were a criminal. So now you have years and years and years of victimizing Black people. That goes back to the minute those laws were made. And a lot of us don't think prison is the correct way to do things anymore. It's very animalistic. We're putting people in these tiny jails. A lot of times people are getting beat the fuck up. I don't know if I can swear on live, but I did. And treated horribly, fed disgusting food. It's not like everyone's going to the prison of the Harvey Weinstein. So I think it's really important to look at where prison started, where, I know Harvey Weinstein would make you laugh, but it's important to look at where it started. Why have Black communities and police had such a long time running against each other? And it's because police were filling jails to meet quotas, to make sure there was enough Black people to do the free labor. Okay? So I just think we have to look at that. It doesn't matter if you think Black Lives Matter is not the right movement for you, the hashtag should say Black Lives Matter too, or all that stuff. It doesn't matter. Let's stop arguing about hashtags and words and you have privilege and I don't and blah, blah, blah. Let's stop all that. Let's just look facts. Okay? Slavery's abolished. People need free labor. We'll put that in the law. We're going to use that to round up Black people, put them in prison, make them do free labor. The next wave of this is the war on drugs. And just like we saw the war on terror, which Donald Trump is terrorizing his own people right now, so I don't know who's winning that one, but the war on drugs, you have communities where you've ripped all of these fathers from their families, okay, for years. They were in there for years, making things, building building stuff. Half the things in the United States were built by slaves. You can't get on the train and tell me you don't know who made those tracks. So we have to look at everything, not just the racism, but actually the laws and how jails work, and to continue to perceive and put out an image that black men are scary, and to put out an image that black men are criminals. That went on for a long time because it was, again, the way to feed the jails. It was a way to put people in jail. And this is what is happening now. And so the war on drugs came. We all know that there was a huge crack cocaine influx in the United States in the slums. Okay? And we have to remember, some people think, oh, white people put the drugs there, or crack cocaine was put there on purpose. No matter what you think, let's keep race out of it, okay? Let's not say these people put, just for clarity, to not get lost. Say crack cocaine came out, and it just came out and people loved it, and no one put it there. Let's just say that for now. Cocaine was a very light sentencing back then. Cocaine was like a slap on the wrist. Cocaine was like, the trendy drug of white people, to be honest. And it was expensive. So if you were doing cocaine, it wasn't like you weren't in the slums doing cocaine. You were doing crack because it was cheaper. So now you have a whole bunch of people in the slums, people in the hood dealing crack, selling crack, dying from overdoses. Again, we had the war on drugs. So now, perfect. We had long sentencing. Bill Clinton passed a law, okay? 3 strikes basically and you're out. And he had minimum sentencing. So judges didn't have a choice. There was no, oh, this woman, she's been a very good person her whole life, and this is one incident where she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, we'll give her like a year. No. There was none of that. People got life. People got long sentences in jail. And again, people are joining now. I'm going to go back to saying the reason for that is the law that emancipated slaves said no free labor unless you are a criminal. So for years since then, we have to make black people criminals in the United States in order to fill these jails. These jails that make our clothing, that make Victoria's Secret bra and underwear, which if you're a girl or if you've ever bought something for your girlfriend there, that was made by people in prison, okay? And they're not cheap. Like, and in my head, why are these huge corporations in bed with the prisons? And why are the prisons in bed with the police officers? And why at the end of the day should free labor be something that people can make money off of, okay? So I'll go back to where I was. We have an influx of drugs in the slums. We have black people being thrown in jail for small amounts of cocaine. We basically treated drugs not like the mental health issue we know it is, not like the disease we know it is. We treated it like you are a murderer and a criminal and you're going to jail forever. So now, you keep going. Bill Clinton actually came out and said, hey, that was the wrong way to deal with that. I'm actually going to say we shouldn't have had minimum sentencing, and we shouldn't have put people away for so long who didn't do these horrible crimes, who only had minor offenses. And some people were innocent, okay? But he said it around the time that we all knew Hillary Clinton was going to start to want to run. So it's not like he said it just because Bill Clinton's this great guy and he realized his wrongs. Politics is a game, right? And you have to admit you're wrong to get votes. And if you have a large black community saying, hey, you put my son in jail for having a bit of weed on him and now he's in jail for life because this war on drugs, well, you're going to have to come out and get that woman's vote. And if there's enough of those mothers and enough of those sisters and enough of those friends who remember your law that locked up all of their friends, then you have to stop and think for a second, how am I going to get the vote next time? And hey, V, I'm explaining the history of how the laws came to be and why Black men and women are considered criminal in the States, and how this actually feeds our corporations like Victoria's Secret, I said, and JCPenney, and these places that get inmates to make their clothing, to make their products, to sell it to us. You need people in jail to make money. Okay? This is a fact. This is an actual fact. People need to be filled in jails in order for the jail to succeed. You need the jail to make money. You need the jail to be full. Hospitals, we saw with COVID, like when hospitals are empty, they don't get the same funding. I'm not going to COVID. I'm not even going to touch that topic right now. I'm just saying when it comes to jails, they need to be full. So after basically the slums were filled with crack, people were locked up, and then you had Bill Clinton saying, hey, I shouldn't have done that, maybe we'll change that. And then you had Hillary Clinton saying, prison reform, screaming, prison reform, we need to give people a second chance. Well, guess what? Hillary Clinton supported Bill Clinton's bill before that was lock everybody up. So if you're just joining me, I'm just going to go really quick. Slavery was abolished. Emancipation, everyone was free. They put a loophole in there. You are a free person, no free labor unless you are a criminal. So that is the rule. That was the rule of abolishing slavery. You can be free unless you're a criminal. Because they needed the free labor. They locked up a bunch of people during Jim Crow. If you see all the Black people, working on the chain gang back in the day, in a lot of movies, a lot of songs, they talk about the chain gang. That's people that were locked up because the prisons needed the free labor, and the country was built on free labor. The only way they could free slaves but still get them to work for free was to put them in jail. So I'm not talking Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, white privilege. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm saying the facts. If you are a fact person, this is a fact, okay? And this is what I think is really missing at the root of everything, is how did we get here? And no, not just slavery. How did we get here in terms of the law? And why do prisons get free labor? And why did they basically consider Black people to be the people to do free labor? Well, because they were at the time. So again, you go back to Bill Clinton's war on drugs, okay? And that's how, you lock up a lot of people in the slums that are doing crack and have addiction, even though those people should have been in rehabs. Those people should have been helped. Those people should not be locked away for life. You know what I mean? Especially in poor neighborhoods where now you have single moms trying to raise kids and work. And we know what happens in that situation. Kids grow up, rampant and wild because they didn't have both parents in the house, or they didn't have their father figure. So you have to remember, without talking specifically about racism now and how Canada is this and US is this, we have to look at things differently. This is how the prison system was built. This is how they wanted to basically criminalize people. They wanted to make sure that people saw Black men as criminals so they could lock them up and keep making money, keep the economy going, okay? So nowadays, okay, maybe prison reform is a good idea. People are like, you know what, we're not going to do prison reform, we're going to do prisons from home. That's what they kind of want to do now. They really want to put ankle bracelets on people and do parole. There's a company that makes millions of dollars off ankle bracelets, okay? So it may sound super civil, but we all know they like to monitor. We all know somebody's watching the live and making sure I'm not a terrorist. We all know people in governments and corporations like to monitor us. So the idea of an ankle bracelet being the resolution to all prison, I'm skeptical personally about, because I don't think that they're just doing it out of the kindness of their heart. I think it's money. So when you go back to things like George Floyd and the Michael Browns of the world, yes, we can say everybody's life does fucking matter. That is 100%. And I have taken yesterday, Blackout Tuesday, to learn more about Israel and Palestine, because I don't know much about them. And I woke up today to see a Palestinian boy murdered by police, and they were holding signs that said "Rest in peace, Iyad," and "Justice for George." Okay, we're talking about in Palestine. So this movement is for everyone. This is not just for Black people. This is not just for white people. This is for everywhere in the world. But in order to understand, in order to really grasp what's happening, you have to know how prisons were made. And the reason you have to understand the Abolish Slavery Rule and Act is because you have to understand why they put in there no free labor unless you're a criminal. Because then you make everyone a criminal, you get the free labor. And this is almost a way of modern day slavery. We know that prisons are not what they should be, and people are not treated well in them. And now it's like we're not even waiting and seeing. Yeah, I'll share. I don't know how to save it, Jalila, so let me know how to save it. But we're basically waiting. We're not even waiting to see if they're criminals. We've just decided that they're criminals. And now we're just treating them and killing them and doing whatever to them. And this is why the revolt is so insane. This is why it's gotten to this place, because people have watched this happen to, we all saw that video of the different generations crying and yelling, because this has been going on forever. Since the abolition of slavery, they have been locking Black people up for free labor. But the thing is, now we're seeing the innocence of people. Now we're seeing people murdered, and people were murdered before, and people have been locked up, and we all know shouldn't have been. But now that we have phones and we're seeing this, it makes a huge difference. And I think that there's a really important message there to look at. If you haven't seen my post about the documentary 13th, it is not just a slavery documentary. It is actually, yeah, exactly. It was actually not, it's not about slavery. It's about after slavery and how we have a broken system in prison. And there are amazing police officers. There are amazing police officers. And I say that as someone who's dealt with police and had police cry with me when my dad passed away. Like, there are, and that's no one's arguing that all cops are bad, or at least I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that all Black people are innocent either. But in this time, I have to explain where this comes from, because the only way to see where we're going is to know where we came from. And I will not sit in Canada and say, oh, Canada's better than the States, so, just let them have their reward. The systematic racism is worse there. Well, you know what? If I was alive during the Holocaust, I would hope that I was smart enough to think, I don't care that it's happening over there. I still care that those are people. And I just got lucky. We just got lucky. Fate, God, whatever you believe in, to be born in Canada. It's not like we did anything to be born here. And if you're an immigrant and your parents escaped here, or you came here as a refugee, or you came here just because it was a better life, or you just wanted to come to Canada, we have even more reason to look at our big brother, the United States, and say, hey, that's not okay. And we're going to make sure that we tell you guys that's not okay. Because you guys have been doing this for years. And again, I'm going to figure out how to save this, because I'm near the end here of explaining it, but I just really wish people could stop yelling over hashtags and what's offensive to them, and just actually look at the facts of slavery being abolished, of free labor being exploited, of mass incarceration being a tool to make corporations have money. I just need people to really look at the history. And if you found this interesting at all and thought, I kind of want to know more, there is a documentary on YouTube called 13th. It came out on Netflix. It got 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. I have been posting about it. It came out years ago. So it's, when you watch it, you will see Michael Brown, and you will see Eric Garner, and you will see things you saw and were outraged about years ago, and it'll make you a little bit more, I would say, shocked in a sense, because you're like, wow, I was mad then. Doesn't matter what culture you were, doesn't matter what background you were, we are human beings. If I see an animal abused, I'm not thinking, oh, well, it's a dog, it's not a person. No, the the point is that we need to be more civil as a society, and prisons are not built for what they were supposed to be built for. So I will save my life, and I hope you guys learned something. Okay, bye.